my son to download it. That's nice. And then the other one is Tennis Channel, which is, I do a bunch of stuff for Tennis Channel, including their streaming service, as well as their international business. That's what I do. I'm a native New Yorker. Apparently we played basketball.
Me too.
He played basketball, I didn't, at the same elementary school.
Okay, so what do we want?
I just wanted to get a quick overview of sort of who's interested in sort of producing in general, like film, television? Is that an interest for anybody? Okay, and what about more on the creative side, like writing, and then even like acting? Okay, just to get a sense of kind of what you're interested in.
I'm a writer as well, so I can speak to some of that stuff for you guys.
I think maybe I'll go first.
Sure.
And sort of talk about why I got into this, and go back for that answer questions. So I got into this business by accident. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer when I went to college. I was a political science major. And things didn't work out too well for me at college. And so I decided, well, they decided for me that I shouldn't go to college any longer. And so that was, the political science part was over, the lawyer part was over, and that was okay, actually, because it was through that process that I actually found what I wanted to do. What I ended up doing actually sort of goes back to a similar environment that you're in here right now. Growing up in New York, there was a TV station that was called Channel 5 in New York. It's a Fox 5 now, but back then it was WNEW. And they used to produce a lot of local TV shows just for the city of New York. And there was a show called Wonderama, which was a kid's show.
My brother was on Wonderama.
I was on Wonderama too.
Wow.
And came as a guest of one of a guy named Harry Lorraine, who would memorize everyone's names in the room. He was a memory and motivation expert. And his son and I went to the same school, and so we got invited to go be in the audience of Wonderama. And I remember going into the giant elevator, went upstairs to the 5th or 6th floor of this building on the Upper East Side of New York City, and all of a sudden walking in and seeing the lights and seeing the set, and the show that I had watched every Saturday, I think, up until that point. And I think I was 8 years old or 9 years old. And I wasn't really into watching the show necessarily. I was just into everything that went on during the commercial break, right? All the behind the scenes stuff. I loved the whole idea of people making things and what that process was about. And I was hooked. And I was hooked it's a very distinct memory for me to this day. I can remember every part of the journey of that, going into that taping of that show. I then got a year later to be on a show called Candid Camera, which was one of the first, I guess, reality shows in 4th grade at PS 41, or 5th grade PS 41, and with Muhammad Ali, and that was the person who came in and surprised us. And I was hooked again. My particular part never made it on TV, so I am a struggling wannabe in front of the camera person, but I was hooked. And then I sort of got away from it, and I did the things that people do when you go to school, and you learn a lot of different types of things, and you just sort of settle into a certain path, and you're passionate about it. When I left school, I got a job selling health club memberships, because I had to pay the rent, so that was the easiest way to get somebody to pay the rent. From that, I signed up people that worked at a company that sells television commercials, and now it reignited this thing that I had from when I was 8 years old. And I worked at a company that sold TV commercials. I then went from there to work for the Fox network when the Fox network had just launched. It only had 2 nights of prime time on it. 21 Jump Street was the biggest show on it with Johnny Depp. And I stayed there for 7 years. I then left from there and went to a company that's now called Interactive Corp, which is a fascinating company because it was involved in streaming and interactive very, very early on in a bunch of different categories. From there, I went back to a company called UPN, which was a television network, and I got to live my second passion, which was wrestling. And we were able to launch a show called SmackDown. It launched on UPN, and now it's on Fox on Friday nights. And then after that, my son was born, and so I took a year off and had that opportunity. And then desperately wanted to go back to work after that year with my son. And then sort of went around a lot of different things and ended up where I am today for about 8 years. And what I do today is really about streaming. It's about figuring out new ways of delivering programming to viewers. All of you have grown up with streaming. There was a time when there were 3 television networks and all you had was an antenna, and then there was a cable box, and then the remote control was a big giant box that was connected by wire to the cable box. And now today, you're at a place where all that's unplugged, the wires have been cut, the cord has been cut, and it's just sort of freewheeling. The point I want to make through all of this is that through all of this, it was about passion for me. It was about making sure that I stayed open to lots of different ideas, in part because I had to, and in part because that's really the best way to learn, right, is to really feed on different things, some that you might not be passionate about at first, but you may become passionate about. In my job today, I oversee a lot of different things. That includes things like production and buying TV shows and things like that, down to going to tennis tournaments, except this week, a tennis tournament. But going to tennis tournaments and figuring out new business plans, down to budgets and Excel sheets. All these things are part of the job of being in media or entertainment or in any job. But for me, the only message I want to get across, and then I'll hand it off because I've talked too long now, is passion. Right? No matter what, anything you do, be passionate about it. And if you're not passionate about it, find a way to be passionate about it, or find something else that you are passionate about.
Okay. So again, my name is Jordan Cranis. Thank you all for listening. So I'm a television producer and writer, and I'll explain a little bit about how I got into it. When I went to college, I got 2 degrees, one in broadcasting and one in English. I loved reading, I loved storytelling. That's essentially what I do, is I tell stories. When I got out of college, I had these 2 degrees and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did not have a burning passion that you did to get into anything in particular. What I did have, and I was very fortunate, was that I had an opportunity was given to me where I moved back from University of Miami. I moved back to New York, not knowing what I wanted to do, and I was given an opportunity at a place called Classic Sports Network, which was basically, I don't even know if you guys are familiar with what Nickelodeon or Nick at Night is, but basically, you do. Okay, so Nick at Night shows old TV shows, Rugrats, whatever it is that you guys remember from your childhood, and now suddenly you're getting to see it again. So the Classic Sports Network was similar, but with sports. So for me, they were showing Muhammad Ali fights, or they were showing, classic World Series games or things like that. I was very fortunate. We had a family friend who was involved in this company, and I got hired there. And again, it was very fortunate, because the truth is, if my parents had friends that were butchers, I may have gotten an interview with a butcher, and I've been doing that now. So I just was very fortunate, and I happen to love sports, so it fit very well with me. And I guess the message, in addition to the passion that I would like to get across, is to take opportunities, because what I did with this opportunity was I really busted my ass for these people. It was a brand new company. It wasn't even on the air yet. So I was one of the first 6 or 7 employees there. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did everything they asked me to do, and I did it as hard as I could, and showed them that I was appreciative of being there. And that worked in my favor, because I now was working in television. I had a career path. I had something to look ahead to. I learned from the people who had been doing it before me, which was another, I tell people who come to me now, who we hire when they're young, I would rather you tell me you don't know how to do something than to try to fake it like you do know what you're doing, spend time doing something that you're hoping may be the right way to do it, and then come to me and show it to me and it's not right, because that's just now you've wasted a lot of time. So I took the opportunity to ask questions and to learn as much as I could, which allowed me to grow in the business. And I started out, I was literally going and getting, I would transport tapes from one building to another building because that was my job as a production assistant. But in watching other people, I got to learn, how do you actually make television? How do you actually write a script? I learned from people and put a lot of my soul into it. And so what I ended up doing there is doing documentaries. What I discovered about myself is that I love telling stories. And like I said earlier, that's really what I do. Everybody in this room has a story. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Every single one of us has a story, and there are interesting parts of that story. And so what I ended up doing while I was in New York was documentaries, mostly sports-related documentaries, which was thrilling for me. I got to meet my hero, Muhammad Ali, and do a documentary about him.
Wasn't he the logo of Classic Sports?
He had the arms up, that's exactly right, from like 1963 or something, yes. So anyway, it was, I got to dive into what I learned that I love, which was telling stories. You learn as much as about somebody as you can, either through them, through their friends, through their family, and tell their story in as intimate a way as possible. So that's what I ended up doing in New York. I was doing sports documentaries, and I won a couple of Emmys for them, which was exciting. One of the things that is nice about what I think is nice about what I do is you get pretty immediate feedback sometimes, because you do work and then people see the work on TV or wherever it is and they react to it. Sometimes they don't react great, but sometimes they do, and when they do, it's a pretty good feeling because you know you've put a lot into it. So again, for me, it's about telling stories. When I moved from New York to here, I discovered they didn't really seem to have documentaries, and that's how I shifted into the reality world, the non-scripted world, because it seemed kind of similar. There's a lot of interviewing of people and telling people's stories, real people, regular people's stories. I do, like I mentioned, I do a lot of shows that you may have heard of, American Ninja Warrior and Hell's Kitchen and Big Brother and things like that. All of them, regardless of the fact that they're a competition or some other kind of show, we're still just telling stories. So I like to learn about people and to tell their stories in as intimate a way as possible so that the viewer really gets to know them. One of the appeals, for example, of a show like American Ninja Warrior, if you think about it, I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it's an obstacle course show. And essentially, I mean, it's pretty amazing what these people do athletically. It's an incredibly difficult obstacle course to get through. But the truth is, if it was just people running through an obstacle course time after time after time, it would be really fucking boring. Sorry. It just would be. You're seeing the same thing over and over. What makes it interesting is that we get to learn about the people that are doing it. And so suddenly, you care if the fireman gets up the salmon ladder, or if the mother of 3 who's overcoming cancer is going to be able to get through the course. We're telling these people's stories, and that's what I'm passionate about, that's what I love to do, and that's why I love what I do. Okay?
Hi. So I'm a local Angelino, and my parents were in the music business, and so I grew up loving variety shows. That was my thing. I just like sort of, in a way, kind of his world, but I just loved them. You know, what would be kind of, I guess in your version of America's Got Talent would be probably that now. And, but I went to UCLA. I mean, I had friends in Beverly. I still see them all the time. And I went to Westlake, so I'm a real LA girl. So, but I always knew I was going to be in the entertainment business. So in college, even though I was a history major, I was always having internships, working in various different things, development, you know, covering scripts, so forth. And my first job was as a PA on the Academy Awards. And what I found was that for me, what seemed to happen is I was always the person that was being told to run down to the talent and deliver something to Goldie Hawn or something because, you know, I was the one that could talk to her. And so one of the internships I had had in college, they knew a woman who was a publicist, and they said, well, what do you like about the business? I said, well, I think I'm good with talent. And they said, well, you should be a publicist. And I didn't even know what that was, but I met this woman named Susan Geller, who at the time represented the entire Rat Pack, John Hughes, Molly Ringwald, Andrew McCarthy, all those great Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club, all those movies. And I was like, I'm in, because those were the hot kids at the time. And I was at the right place at the right time, in that she was the scariest person to work for. She knows, I would tell her now. But what I felt about it was that I had to learn how to be super prepared, because I always had to have the answer, because she was hard to work for. And so then she just started handing me people at a really young age, so I had a lot of responsibility to run around with all of these actors, because she was sort of almost retiring at that point. So I kind of was at the right place at the right time, but I worked really hard. And then years later, after I had done that, I'd sort of done everything you could with publicity. I wanted to learn the business side of the business, so I jumped over to talent management, which I've been doing for a long time. And basically, what I like about that is, at least for me, I never know what my day is, which I love, which is, it's all about who I represent and what they want to do. That continued to get me also into producing as well, so I produced quite a lot of television, movies. I just finished a horror film with Lynn Shay, who stars in all the Insidious franchises, and Tobin Bell, who's in the Saw franchises. I'm doing a documentary right now on a 111-year-old woman that's really amazing. It's like kind of great. It's a personal accomplishment for myself ever. And so I think the combination of what they're talking about, which is sort of this passion, has always led me. Like, I don't even, sometimes, maybe that's gotten me in trouble, but I just, if I love something, I will figure it out. And I will figure out how to get to somebody. One time I produced Jerry Springer's movie. I just loved the Springer show. I just had to meet Jerry Springer, and I got his phone number. And I called him. I didn't even know, like, I just told him. And he believed me, and he met me for breakfast. And that's how that started. So I think sometimes it's like being fearless, and but also hard work, and still to this day, like, whatever it takes to get it done, I'm doing it. That's it.
Alright, so this is the part where we get into Q&A. There's no such thing as a bad question. There's only a bad, it's only bad not to ask the question. Right? If you hold back a question, then you gotta wait some other time in life to get it answered. Maybe you'll never get it answered. Here you got 3 professionals that can answer kind of like golden questions, because they're speaking from the truth. They have nothing to hide except to share. So, anybody with a question?
Go ahead.
I wonder, do you think starting a YouTube channel is a good start to, like, getting a career for film and television?
Yes, I would say yes. I mean, that's more of a you generation thing than an us generation thing. But I would suggest that any experience at all, whether it's writing or producing your own YouTube channel, whatever it is, absolutely is good, because it can give you experience. I don't know if is it something like a studio thing, like you're just talking to the camera, or would you go out and shoot something?
Anything, really.
Yes, the answer is yes. Any experience that you can get, because I will tell you that when you go to try to get a job, people are not going to, listen, you're at a disadvantage when you're coming out of school and you're young and you don't have experience, but if you can tell them that I produce my own YouTube channel, A, you've got something to show them that you've done, and B, you've got experience. So you're going to be ahead of the game of people who did not try to do that.
And to just add to, I think what is cool about YouTube is that it's basically everything in a box. It's kind of the way it's referred to, right? It's got, you could be one person with a set phone or camera, whatever you want to use, and you're the one doing the editing, you're the one posting it, you're the one actually putting in the metadata, you're the one trying to figure out how it actually connects around all the different social groups on YouTube. And so if you come out of that with more than one person watching it on a consistent basis, well, then you sort of now have experience in creating something, telling a story, telling it on a consistent basis. So if you're doing it every day, every other day, once a week, I probably need to do more than that to have a YouTube channel, right? And then you're getting people to actually watch it and give comments, and you're sharing it. Well, now you have social experience. Everybody here already has social experience, but I mean social experience in the context of actually doing it in a professional manner, a creative manner. And when you start to think about it in those sort of parts of the process, if I were looking to hire someone for a position to sort of be, an editor, or someone who's going to be what we call predators, a producer editor, and that person came in and sort of asked questions about what they did. I asked questions about what they did, and they told me I had a YouTube channel, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. I'd be like, okay, cool. This person has experience of all these different parts of it in some way. Let's give that person a chance over the other 20 applicants that are coming in.
I also, just to add to that thought also, is regardless of your career path may take one direction or another, but what will be invaluable is an understanding of all of the parts of what it takes to put together a TV show. So let's say you end up deciding I'm going to be an on-camera person, or you decide I'm going to be a writer, or I'm a producer. Having done that, because you're doing all of these things, editing, shooting, all of that stuff, uploading, all of that stuff, is going to be invaluable down the line, because you'll have an understanding of what everybody else is doing and how that fits into making a TV show.
I will say though, as if you're an actor, you should also have acting lessons, because I will tell you that a lot of the YouTube talent, I'm sure you guys have seen this, they get really hot for a minute, and then the traditional sort of networks and so forth might say, oh, I'm going to develop a show around you, and a lot of those shows fail because they're not really actors. So if you're serious about acting, as opposed to being a personality that something else gets developed for you, also study your craft in that regard.
How useful would you say is like going to college for this and getting a degree? Like, is it really necessary to be successful in this?
You know, it's a mixed answer now, right? I have a son who left college midway and got a job at Sony. He just felt that he was already too old. He was already into a lot of culture, pop culture, very interested in it, spoke Japanese, really felt that he was a good fit for that. And I had to support that because I could see that he just already wanted to be out there and work. At the same time, I think growing in college, and look, I think all of you have the luxury, if you go to a great college, of meeting other people that could end up being your creative partners for life. I've met so many interesting writing teams, acting teams, people that have known each other, or people, I still met so many people at UCLA that I've called upon in business. So I think you have a real opportunity, because the rest of your life, you will have to go out and search for information. It's your only chance in your whole life that information's being given to you. So take advantage of it. But I understand your generation is different than mine was, and it's all faster, and there's different careers now than I could have ever imagined. So it comes with a caveat.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't graduate college, right? So, and I do okay, right? So, not okay enough though, give enough of an allowance, but I do okay. And there are clearly times personally where I think about, gee, did I miss that experience, right? If I had to do it over again, but that's not really the way to look at it, if I had to do it over again. It's to think about what was I doing at the time that caused me not to take full advantage of what was happening there. I've gone and thought about going back to UCLA, and gone and stood at line at the registrar's office to see how many credits I have left, only to get to the front of the line and them tell me I have like a gajillion left to graduate. And so I leave again, and that's the end of that idea, because I have to go at night and so on. But there is a part of me, not from a career point of view at all, because I do think what has made me successful in my career is the mere fact that everything I had done was against conventional wisdom. And that has stayed with me, sort of If someone said, this is the way you do it, and that didn't make sense to me, just because this is the way it is, then I would just naturally challenge that. I'd have to come up with a better idea, not just say, well, that sucks. I'd have to come up with a better idea as to why I think there's a better path or a different path, and so on. So, but the idea of going to college, really taking advantage of all the different things that are there, because there is no other place that has literally everything in one central location for you to experience from. But if your circumstances end up where you end up not finishing college, in mine it was pretty easy. I had a choice. I didn't go to class, so that was my choice. It was very early. I think it was prospect. Anyway, but they made the choice for me. They were like, "You clearly don't want to go to college anymore, right?" And I was like, "No, well, okay, you're right." And then my parents were like, "What happened? What did we do wrong?" All these types of things. And then it turned out fine. So I just think you just need to sort of go and sort of say to yourself going in, let me take the best advantage of this experience.
I will say this, and this is something I've thought about frequently. For what I do for a living, I honestly can't tell you a single fact that I learned in college that applies to anything that I do right now. And that's just, I'm just being honest. There's not one single thing that I know how to do now, having been in this career for some time now, that I learned because I went to college. So that has nothing to do with why I do what I do now. At the same time, I loved college. College was a place for me to learn how to be an adult in a way, in a very safe way, because mom and dad are still a phone call away, but you learn how to be an adult, and you learn how to socialize, and you learn how to. So while I would never recommend to not go to college, because I think it's a phenomenal experience. At the same time, I don't think college is necessarily going to be the thing that you learn everything you need to know to get into a certain career. You have to do the career to learn how to do the career, whatever it is. You have to have experience doing it. Now, I had an internship in college, so I guess I learned a couple of things about, but really it's doing the job is where you're going to learn how to do the career. At the same time, college is I will say this, I went to a private college, which at the time, I didn't know anything. Now that I'm a parent and my son is coming up on college age, it's frightening how much it costs. And I will say this, I could
save a lot of money.
I could have had just as great an experience literally at any college. Yeah. It's just about going and experience and being in the middle of it, as I had at the school that I went to. And I almost feel a little bit, well, not almost, I feel a little bit guilty about how much my parents had to pay for college, but I don't regret going to college at all.
It's interesting. If I don't know how many people here do something with KBEV. With raising hand, anybody? Anything? Okay, cool. So, first of all, to have a facility like this, I've been to TV stations that have half of this, and it used to be a gas station before it was a TV station, right? If you go to UCLA, there's no studio. There's a radio station, and it's an okay radio station, and it's on campus only, right? The college I went to back east first had a radio station. It actually had a full power antenna. It broadcast all over the Mid-Hudson Valley. And when I had a radio show, and I was now in that environment, and we had to keep logs because it was a license of the FCC, and so we had to learn that profession, sort of as a DJ doing sort of talk radio music, right? If you go down to USC, there's something called the Annenberg School. The Annenberg School has a gigantic television studio, and it's a newsroom, and it produces news.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and so even if you don't end up going into news, the fact of going there is pretty amazing, right? And being part of that experience. At Arizona State University, they have an amazing school of journalism. It's called the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. They have a TV station there, right? If you go into Grinnell in Iowa, right, they got facilities there. If you go to Syracuse University, they got facilities there. So the idea of being around TV stations and that business and learning that stuff early on, you can actually learn at colleges that have those facilities, and that's an amazing experience.
Take advantage of this. Having access to something like this is huge, because like you said, being exposed to it, getting to see and touch and feel what it is to make TV is a big deal. So use this opportunity. Yeah, go ahead.
This year I'm one of the leading producers here at KBEV. KBEV actually started from information retrieval back in 1930s, 40s, and now we've moved to Spectrum Cable, and now we're also operating YouTube, Vimeo, and a lot of social media platforms. So coming from that traditional media industry and the media field, what kind of transition or what kind of shift do you guys see from like some sort of traditional industrial kind of standard into our new generation media? I'm sorry, it was a big question.
No. So there's a lot of layers to that, right? So I think if you sort of step back and just sort of say, I was struck by I tell stories, right? I was at something somewhere with my mom when I was like 12, and the producer of 60 Minutes was there on a panel and basically explaining what he does. And it's Don Hewitt, right? And this is 60 Minutes, right? And basically he said, we tell stories. And I was like, that's news. Really, they tell stories. So if you think about it, if the medium is to tell stories, to inform, right, to have some sort of communication connection with the other person on the other end or the masses, then really what technology is doing, because that's really what is shaping this, is that the path to that person is multiple, right? And there is very wide forms of delivering that path. Being on Channel 6 on Spectrum is a wide path to a viewer. Being on YouTube is potentially wide, it's potentially narrow, and that's the beauty of YouTube. So I think the best way to think about sort of how technology is impacting the ability for someone who's a storyteller to reach someone who wants to hear that story, or maybe actually tell that story back in some form, interact back. It's then to look at all these new forms of distribution that allow that to happen and to embrace what that is. So there's a thing coming up, and I encourage you to read about it, or there's a YouTube video that I just saw that really does a really good job of explaining it. There's a thing called ATSC 3.0, which is also referred to as Next Gen TV. Both are kind of boring sounding. When televisions used to be more square looking before they became wide, right? This was analog and this was HD, which was also referred to as ATSC 1.0. So the way a signal from a TV station, Mount Wilson over here, there's towers on the top of Mount Wilson, and they broadcast out signals. And those signals can get picked up by a cable operator, they can get picked up by anybody who has an antenna, right, and so on. And that spectrum, which belongs to citizens of the United States, is licensed by the government to people that own the license at TV station to use that spectrum to broadcast within the confines of the law. There's something called 3.0. There's no 2.0. It's sort of skipping right over 2.0. It's going to 3.0. Well, 3.0 actually allows the picture to be even better. It allows you to have more things going through it. But instead of it being broadcast-based, it's actually IP-based. So it's the internet. It is a one-way internet connection. It's all streaming. Well, because of that, it can know where you are, right? It can know what ads you want. There's all sorts of interaction you can have. If you have an internet connection in a house, which pretty much everybody does, it connects into your router and therefore can send a path back to the broadcaster. And now you can have it interactive around a TV station. Well, that means, because we're talking about bits, basically, this is all the ability to do interactivity. It's the ability to sell things, right? And so if you start to think about technology that way, that if you're telling a story and now all of a sudden that story, in the most simplest, let's just take music for instance, you're talking about a band, and you're in a band, and you have a show, you're doing a show about you as a band, and then all of a sudden you're going to perform somewhere, and there's tickets to be sold, you can actually embed that ticket sale within your video so that someone who's watching the video could buy a ticket automatically. Well, we all know this. You can go to StubHub, do the same sort of thing. This will allow anybody to do that. All right, and so I think the key is this transition happens, which is happening very quickly, and it's evolving and evolving and evolving, is to really understand the technology. And I think this generation, more than mine for sure, is far better, more equipped to be able to embrace the tools that are going to exist than we were. So,
Alright.
starts with an all right.
So I don't necessarily know where I'm going to college yet, but I know that I want to major in journalism, and so, I think I want to go into web journalism, but I'm obviously not going to confine myself to a specific medium because I have a lot to learn. So in the instance that I attend a university that doesn't have a set journalism school, how would you suggest that I gain practical experience in say television if I'm switching from print or web to that medium? If there's because I'm sure if I go to a school that doesn't have a journalism school, they don't have the facilities for that.
An internship is always really, really helpful. And whatever city you end up in, whatever school you go to, there will be a newspaper, there will be a TV station, there will be places to go, and you offer up your time to be around, you help out, you do whatever they ask you to do. And this is what I was saying about my first job. I was given an opportunity. Some of the things that I didn't love. I didn't love lugging boxes and boxes of tapes from one building to the other, but it gave me access to learn from the people who knew what they were doing. And an internship will be the same thing, is you just are exposed to what it is that these people are doing, and it will tell you, is that something that I want to do? Because maybe you discover, you know what, I thought that that's what I wanted, but now that I'm seeing it in real life, it's not really exactly what I want, and so you go look for the next thing.
A lot of colleges also have their own newspapers,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah,
Yep.
right,
And
right.
so to work there, a lot of colleges also have their own radio stations, and they do more than play music. Especially now, there's a lot of talk and political conversation and things like that. But unless you're in Antarctica, there's going to be something to intern, right where your school is. Yeah.
I think you guys have the luxury that we didn't have of talking about being able to have the ability to look up a video about something that interests you or somebody that interests you. And also you have the uncanny ability to reach out to a lot of those people. And you can do that and write someone that you've been studying and admire and tell them that, hey, I noticed that you're in Los Angeles and I'm 17 years old and I'd love to meet you and I've been studying your work. I mean, you'd be amazed you could get that meeting. On a sort of side note, but I went to a college recently and it would be nameless, but had a high profile actress that somebody asked, what was the thing that you feel that helped you get further along in your business than anything you've ever done? And she said, writing thank you notes. And do you know that all these kids were on computers typing away. Now this is making me seem old, but the whole time she was talking, they were all typing. I couldn't figure even out what was happening. They were all on their computers. And I was watching what was happening, but there was one girl next to me who wasn't. She was watching. And I remembered her name. She had a unique name, and she was writing down what was happening because she was really paying attention as opposed to this. And do you know that the next day she was the only one that wrote the thank you note to my client? And my client is the kind of person that would give her an internship on her show to work on that show. And I thought, so it's really important. It's simple things, but you have the ability here to have access to people that would blow your mind and also study. Like if I were working in KBEV, I would be watching just who are the reporters that I think are interesting, what's their style, and then what can I bring of my own style to it that makes me unique, that maybe makes me stand out a little bit more. What's the thing, what's the show idea, what's the thing that makes me kind of have a fresh approach to what's happening, but kind of studying from the greats. That's just my opinion, but I think those are key things.
and showing something as simple as a thank you note shows somebody that you have a real interest in what they're doing. And I know that if somebody young comes to me and shows a real interest in what I'm doing and wants to learn about it, I am thrilled to tell them a little bit about it or give them an opportunity, because they've had the courage to come forward and say, this is something that I'm interested in, I'd like to learn from you. And that goes a long way, rather than waiting for somebody to say, hey, do you think you want to do this? I don't have time to go ask everybody if they want to do this. But if somebody comes to me and says they want to do it, okay, I'm impressed with that.
And just one part, I think everyone, when they think of media, they think of media as in nationally, right? I'm going to reach everybody in the United States. And therefore, because that sounds cool to reach a lot of people, and I have a national thing. And actually, where all the action is, where all the excitement is, where all the energy is, today and going forward, is things that are national have become remarkably consolidated very quickly. There used to be a lot of national ways to get to market, right, to reach people. You know, Disney just bought Fox, so-and-so just bought so-and-so, and all of a sudden you have like 6 companies that control everything in terms of content going to a national audience. Local, actually, whether it's neighborhood local, community local, like KBEV is, or hyper local, which is even more narrow than that, or local to your city. You know, if you think about people's passions in sports, you know, that is a local passion. If you think of passion about politics, there's an old line that all politics is local. It's about what's around you, and actually it's in those environments that a lot of really interesting creative opportunities are going to come out of that, whether it's journalism or whether it's making programming or what have you. I think the key is not to always think that success is going to be because I'm now going to get a national thing, because that's a very hard path. First of all, it's also very limiting in terms of that path.
What about the financial side of this job? Like,
Meaning what? Meaning,
like, for example, like you see in the TVs, like all these people are very rich, like acting and producing movies and writers and
well,
stuff.
I'm gonna. I'll tell you what. Look, you certainly you can do very well. I live a fairly comfortable life, which I'm very fortunate for. I do a job that is not digging for coal. And so, yes, in a lot of ways, I'm very fortunate. I also think that, especially these days, there's an image that is projected, whether it's from the television or from Instagram or whatever it is, that people are living this fabulous lifestyle. I work my ass off, and I do okay. You know, I do okay. I'm not rich by any stretch, but I do okay. I make a good living. Now, there are extremes. There are some people who you know, they make an enormous amount of money. And a lot of people you're talking about are the stars of TV shows or whatever it is. Those people make an extraordinary living. But for the most part, I don't think you can go into something counting on making an extraordinary living. I do fairly well. And I could be doing much worse things with my day-to-day life in order to earn the money that I make. I wouldn't call myself wealthy, though. You guys might. I don't know.
No, I think I'm in a boutique business, so I constantly have to try to sustain and it's sort of a combination of elements, but a lot of it's just hard work, and you know, you have to be able to have the ability to survive through ebb and flow. You know, my actors, some are really high profile and some are young and they're just trying to figure it all out, and I think part of surviving in the business is just keeping it going. You know, it's not, I mean, there are some people that get lucky, they go in their first audition or they accept their first project, but most of them don't. And you have to be able to believe in yourself and figure it out, whether you have to be a waiter on the side or take a side job and figure out, you know, ideally in a perfect world, something that if it's, you know, helps build towards what your interests are, but maybe not. And you just have to, you know, again, figure out how to take the $100 you have, and if you can make a YouTube video out of the $100 that you have, it'll, maybe that's the thing that catches on. Who knew, that sort of, the people that sort of started this whole business, the Freds of the world and those kind of guys like those. I mean, how much did that cost Fred to be in his room, right? I mean, seriously. And then it got bigger and bigger, and then obviously who's happening now, but it didn't cost them a lot of money. They had access and it caught on. So it's different now. You can do things a little bit differently, and then hopefully it makes you a lot of money.
Yes, go ahead.
As an actor, we're kind of always told we need to get the agent and the manager, but aren't told how to. So how would we get in contact with the manager and have them represent us?
I'm not gonna lie, it's hard.
Yeah.
To get a good one. I think a lot of people, that goes, now let's talk about college, back to college. There are some colleges that, for acting specifically, that have good programs and they have these showcases and so forth. I'd be a little bit wary of the local showcases that pretend they're gonna get good agents. There, not a lot of them do. Some actors write letters and they have a point of view, or, send postcards out, things like that. There are certain websites that you can belong to that you can throw your hat in the ring. It's a catch-22 because you have to have a certain amount of things before you get a SAG card, but you can't get a SAG card. So it's not an easy answer. I'm not going to lie. There are a few casting directors, very few that have some. It's kind of also looked down upon now, where a lot of the casting directors used to have all these acting workshops and stuff, but now they're not doing that as much because some of them got into trouble for that. But there are some legitimate acting classes that you can take that will sort of lead you on. So it's not an easy answer. I'm not going to lie. But just being involved in local productions and just kind of networking, and then social media sometimes. If you're going to do something on social media, though, make it timely. Make it something that if you saw it, it would be passed to him and passed to him. Don't do an actor's showcase on social media. People just tune out. They don't want to see that. It's got to be something clever, like Funny or Die, where you pass it on to somebody else because it's funny. And it's timely. It's like Saturday Night Live, timely, that, is something that you're going to want to talk about. And then all of a sudden people go, who's that girl? Sometimes you get lucky, like the girl that was on the newsworthy, controversial commercial about the exercise thing.
Yeah.
I mean, she got hot. She just did a commercial, and it became something that everyone was talking about, and she worked it. So, I mean, you never know, but it's not an easy answer. I wish I had one for you. Networking a little bit. Hustling.
Go ahead.
Same question. How do you get an internship?
Offer yourself up. Honestly, I think
They're posted. I mean,
Yeah.
So we're about to post internships. Every company likes having interns. First of all, there's all sorts of incentives for a company to have internships. Depends on what city the company is located. If you're in the city of Santa Monica, you're more encouraged to offer internships than you are in other cities in the LA area. And it is competitive, right? But you just need to literally call the company or go into the company. A little hard to go into companies nowadays, and ask the HR department where the internships are posted. The way I got my first job selling health club memberships was, in essence, from a posting. I went to the UCLA job board, right? And before they locked me out, I'll be able to go in. I saw a thing for selling health club memberships. So they're there. They're actually formalized now. You can go on companies' corporate websites, and you'll see links over to their internships and so on.
you guys are in a better place for that kind of thing than we were. Now you go on to Google and I don't know what it is that you'd be interested in, what business you'd be interested in, but if you type in internship and the name of the the industry you're looking for, I'm pretty sure 1,000 things will show up, and that will at least give you a guide as to how to start doing it. Yeah, go ahead.
So, through all the stories that we heard, you guys started out doing something that you're not doing now, or it was something different than you're doing now. Some were a little more failure-oriented. There were fewer college degrees in one than the others, but that's splitting hairs. So I guess my question is, in general, how do you think that you've gotten to the point where you think that you're comfortable with your career and that you think you've capitalized on your passion?
Well, he and I can talk about it later.
Well, I'll tell you this. How did I discover that? Listen, I fell into my first job. I really fell into it. It happened to be what I went to school for, sort of, because as a writer, I had the English degree and I was a broadcasting major, but it really could have been anything. And that's a good question. How did I know that I had found the right thing? I don't know. I guess I knew because I wanted to keep learning. That's really what it came down to. I got this job and I decided I was going to commit myself to it. It was a job that happened to be I was a big sports fan and I was working for the sports company, and so that helped. And I was surrounded by really smart people that I knew that I could learn a lot from. And I guess I realized that I was doing what I was meant to be doing because I was really interested in learning how to do it from them. Learning how to, because I knew essentially nothing when I got that first job except to watch the people who really knew what they were doing. And so I learned how to write, and I learned how to, I learned how to edit little videos, and I learned how to ask the right questions to make an interview compelling. So it was really about when I discovered that I wanted to learn more, was when I knew that I had found the right thing. Because I imagine if I didn't care about it, I probably would have looked to do something else, but I did. I found that I really cared.
We ran into Tom. I think he had a good answer. I really do.
Thank you guys.
That was good. Great. Hey. You're doing great.
That's cool. What do you have to say?
I think